The whole studio froze. It happened in an instant, like time slowed down and the air grew heavy. The cameras kept rolling, but no one dared to speak. Even the audience, usually buzzing with laughter and applause, sat silent, eyes wide, waiting. It was supposed to be just another light-hearted interview on a popular talk show. The host was known for his quick wit and cheeky jokes, and Johnny Depp, well, everyone expected him to be charming and playful, as always. But then came the moment that changed everything. The host glanced at Johnny's arms and cracked a joke about his tattoos. What started as a simple tease quickly turned into a jab that felt too sharp, too personal. The room shifted. You could feel the tension coil tighter, and then Johnny Depp said just one sentence. One quiet, unexpected sentence that made the entire room stop, changed the mood. Silenced every single person there. No one saw it coming. What did he say? Why did those few words carry so much weight? Stay with me, I'm going to tell you everything that happened that day. I still remember the day Johnny Depp was booked for our show like it was yesterday. I was a junior producer at the time, fresh in the world of television, and this was the kind of guest you dream about. Johnny Depp, an icon, a legend, walking through our studio doors was enough to make everyone stop and catch their breath. Our talk show was popular, known for its casual fun vibe. The host, Mark, was sharp and quick with jokes. He loved to poke fun at celebrities, but always kept it light-hearted. Nobody ever felt targeted or hurt. At least, that's how it had always been. I'd worked on dozens of interviews, but this one felt different. The buzz backstage was electric. Cameras were set, makeup artists were putting the finishing touches on Johnny, and every crew member was whispering, "This is going to be something special." When Johnny finally walked in, the whole room seemed to glow. He had that effortless charm, the kind that makes you feel like you're talking to an old friend. His smile was warm, and his eyes had stories to tell. The air was thick with anticipation. Everyone wanted to see how this interview would unfold. I remember thinking how cool it was that someone so famous could still seem so real. As I watched from behind the scenes, I felt a little flutter of excitement. This was my chance to be part of something memorable. Little did I know, the interview would take a turn no one expected. The host would cross a line that had never been crossed before, and Johnny Depp's reaction would leave everyone speechless. The interview started just like everyone hoped, light, easy, and full of laughs. Mark, the host, opened with a warm welcome, and Johnny smiled that iconic smile, settling comfortably into his chair. From behind the camera, I watched it all unfold, feeling like a fly on the wall in a moment I'd never forget. Mark asked about Johnny's latest projects, and Johnny spoke with passion but also that laid-back humor he's known for. He told stories about filming, about the strange little things that happen on set, and even shared a funny anecdote about a mishap with a prop sword. The audience laughed, the crew laughed, and I caught myself smiling too. Johnny had that rare ability to be both a superstar and relatable at the same time. The conversation flowed naturally. Mark cracked jokes, and Johnny played along, never taking himself too seriously. When Mark teased him about his eccentric style or those famous hats he loves to wear, Johnny grinned and gave a playful shrug. It felt like watching two old friends having a casual chat. But as the interview went on, I started to notice a slight shift. The jokes were getting a little sharper. Mark's tone, while still light, edged toward being more personal. When the conversation turned to Johnny's tattoos, something changed. Mark joked about a few of them, calling one a wild mystery and another a drunken mistake. The audience chuckled, but the laughter felt a bit forced. From where I stood, I could see Johnny's eyes flicker, just for a moment, with something unreadable. His smile tightened ever so slightly. The easygoing atmosphere began to feel fragile. Still, Johnny handled it gracefully. He didn't snap back or make the situation tense. Instead, he answered calmly, explaining the stories behind some of his tattoos. But I could tell the humor had lost its warmth. The room felt smaller somehow, like we were all holding our breath, waiting to see what would happen next. Watching it all from behind the camera, I felt a knot in my stomach. I've always admired Johnny Depp's kindness and patience, but now, seeing the way the mood shifted, I realized how thin the line is between a joke and something hurtful. And in that moment, I wondered how much was too much. That uneasy feeling settled in as Mark prepared to push just a little further. I didn't know then what was coming next, but I knew it would change the entire mood of the room forever. As the interview moved on, Mark grew more confident, his jokes sharper, his gaze lingering longer on Johnny's arms. The tattoos that decorated Johnny's skin, so many stories inked in black and color, became the center of attention. What started as casual remarks turned into something else. Mark leaned in and said with a smirk, "Johnny, you know, some of these tattoos look like they were done after a wild night out. Especially that one right there." He pointed at a sprawling faded tattoo on Johnny's forearm. "What's the story behind that? Or should I just call it your drunken mistake?" The audience laughed, but there was a strange edge to their laughter, as if they weren't quite sure where this was headed. I felt my stomach twist, a cold knot tightening as I watched Johnny's face. For a split second, the easy warmth in his eyes flickered and dimmed. He paused. The room changed, that moment of silence stretched too long for comfort. I could feel the tension building, thick and heavy, the usual energy of the set, the light-hearted back and forth, evaporated into something uncomfortable and raw. Everyone's smiles faded. Even the audience grew quieter, sensing the shift. Mark, perhaps sensing that his joke had landed wrong, tried to laugh it off. "Come on, Johnny, lighten up. You've got to admit, some of these look like last-minute decisions." But Johnny didn't laugh, he didn't crack a joke to diffuse it. Instead his eyes softened, and he took a slow breath, steadying himself. There was a strength in his calmness, a quiet dignity that spoke louder than any comeback could. He looked directly at Mark, then at the audience. His voice was low, measured, but every word carried weight. "This mistake," he said, nodding toward the tattoo, "is one of the most important things I carry with me." The room was completely still now, even the hum of the cameras seemed to pause. I felt my breath catch in my throat. Johnny went on, "It's a drawing my daughter made before she got sick. Before she left, those words hit like a sudden wave." I watched as Mark's smirk faded into something unrecognizable, shock, regret, maybe even guilt. The other crew members exchanged glances. The audience held their breath, not daring to blink. For a moment, Johnny didn't say anything else. His eyes held a quiet sadness that filled the space between us all. And then, softly, he added, "People often see these tattoos as just art. But for me they are memories. Stories of love, loss, hope, and healing." He didn't accuse or demand sympathy. He simply shared the truth behind his skin, the stories that can't be erased or joked about. Watching this, my heart sank and swelled at the same time. The room was silent, but the weight of those few words was louder than any laughter ever could be. In that instant I realized how easily we can overlook the pain hidden beneath the surface. How a careless joke can touch wounds we don't see. Johnny Depp had just reminded us all, with one simple sentence, that behind every mark, every scar, there's a story worth listening to. After that pause, after the weight of Mark's careless joke, Johnny Depp looked straight ahead, his voice low but clear. Then, with a calmness that surprised everyone, he said just one sentence. "That mistake is the last thing my daughter drew before she got sick." The room went utterly silent. You could hear a pin drop. The audience, who moments before had been laughing along, suddenly sat frozen in place. The energy in the studio shifted from light-hearted to deeply somber. Mark blinked, his mouth opening slightly, as if to say something, but no words came. He stammered, trying to recover, but the gravity of Johnny's words weighed down the atmosphere like a heavy fog. His usual quick wit and humor seemed to vanish entirely. From where I stood, behind the cameras, my eyes filled with tears. I swallowed hard, feeling a mixture of sorrow and admiration for Johnny. I could see it on his face, the quiet pain, but also the strength it took to say that, right there, in front of millions of people. He didn't lash out or snap back at the host. Instead he chose something much more powerful, vulnerability. The kind of honesty that makes people listen. Then Johnny began to share the stories behind some of his other tattoos, each one revealing a chapter of his life most people didn't know. He spoke of a small anchor inked on his wrist, a symbol of hope and grounding during the darkest times. He explained a delicate feather on his shoulder, a tribute to his mother's gentle spirit. And there was a faded name, barely visible now, honoring a friend he had lost. With every word, the room grew quieter, more attentive. It was like hearing a secret whispered in a crowded room. People leaned in, hanging on to every heartfelt explanation. Johnny's tattoos weren't just art, they were memories inked in skin, stories of love, loss, and healing that no one had bothered to ask about before. He looked around the studio, eyes warm but steady, and said softly, "We all have marks on our bodies, some visible, some not. They tell our stories, whether we want to share them or not." The host finally found his voice again, quieter this time. "Johnny, thank you for sharing that." The audience responded with a respectful hushed applause. I remember feeling a shift deep inside me. What started as a joke had become a moment of profound human connection. Johnny's words had stripped away the surface and reminded us all that behind every tattoo, behind every person, there's a story filled with real feelings. That day, I learned something I'll never forget. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can say isn't a clever comeback or a joke, but a simple truth spoken with courage. Johnny Depp didn't need to defend himself. He didn't need to fight back. He just told the truth, and in doing so he silenced the entire room. As soon as Johnny finished speaking, the director called for a commercial break. The lively chatter that usually filled the studio vanished instantly. Instead, a heavy silence took its place. Mark, the host, looked shaken, his usual confident smile wiped clean. He sat back in his chair, staring at his notes but not really reading them. His fingers drummed nervously on the armrest. It was clear the moment had hit him harder than anyone expected. Around the studio, the crew exchanged quiet glances. The cameramen lowered their lenses. The makeup artist paused mid-touch-up. Everyone seemed to be holding their breath, caught between admiration and awkwardness. I stayed where I was for a few seconds, feeling a strange mix of emotions, respect for Johnny's honesty, and sympathy for Mark, who clearly hadn't meant to cause pain. But then, a moment later, I knew I had to go backstage. I had to say something to Johnny. I found him standing near the green room, his expression calm but thoughtful. He wasn't angry or upset, just reflective. I hesitated for a moment, unsure if I should interrupt. Finally, I gathered the courage and said softly, "Johnny, that was really powerful. Thank you." He smiled gently, nodding. "Thank you," he replied. Then after a pause, he added, "People see the art, the tattoos, the surface things. But they never stop to ask about the pain behind them." His words hung in the air, simple but profound. I looked at him, suddenly aware of the quiet strength it must take to carry those stories every day, and to share them so openly in front of millions. He didn't need to defend himself with anger or bitterness. Instead, he chose grace, and that grace changed the mood of the entire studio. I felt something inside me shift that day. Watching him handle the situation with such dignity made me realize how easy it is to forget that behind every joke, every tease, there's a real person with real feelings. Johnny Depp didn't just protect his own story. He reminded everyone watching, and those of us behind the scenes, that kindness and understanding can be far more powerful than any punchline. As the cameras rolled back in, I took a deep breath, knowing that this interview would stay with me forever. The next day, the talk show aired the edited interview. Toward the end of the broadcast, Mark, the host, offered a subtle but sincere apology. "I realize some of my comments yesterday might have been too personal," he said quietly. "It was never my intention to cause any hurt." His tone was humble, a far cry from his usual teasing bravado. The audience responded with a respectful applause, acknowledging his effort to make things right. But the real story didn't stay confined to that studio. The clip of Johnny Depp's quiet, powerful response spread like wildfire across social media. Millions of people watched him share the meaning behind his tattoos, his vulnerability, his strength, and they were moved. Comments poured in, praising Johnny's grace and humility. People talked about how his single sentence, the one that silenced the room, had opened their eyes to something important. How easy it is to make jokes without knowing the full story. How one simple truth can teach compassion in a way no joke ever could. As I read through those comments, and saw the support grow, I felt proud to have witnessed that moment firsthand. I thought about how often we judge others quickly, sometimes even making light of things that carry deep meaning. Johnny's response reminded me that behind every mark, every choice, every visible or invisible scar, there's a story worth hearing. His fans grew even more loyal after that day, not just for his talent, but for his courage in sharing his truth. More than that, people began to look at tattoos and people differently. No longer just as surface art or appearances, but as symbols of personal history, pain, and hope. That interview wasn't just a moment on a talk show, it became a lesson in empathy and respect. A reminder that sometimes, the deepest stories are hidden beneath the skin, and all it takes is one sentence to change how we see the world. That day changed me more than I ever expected. Watching Johnny Depp handle that moment with such quiet strength made me realize how easily we can hurt others without even knowing it. Before, I might have laughed along with a joke about someone's appearance or choices without thinking twice. But now, I stop. I think twice. I remember feeling that knot in my stomach when the host made that joke, and I remember the silence that followed Johnny's words, how powerful they were without needing to shout or argue. It was a lesson in compassion, one that stuck with me long after the cameras stopped rolling. Johnny didn't fight back, he simply told the truth. And the truth silenced the room. That simple act of honesty changed everything. It reminded me that behind every tattoo, every scar, every choice someone makes, there's a story we might never hear. A story filled with pain, hope, love, or loss. It taught me that grace and understanding hold far more power than laughter at someone else's expense. Since that day, I try to look deeper, to be kinder, because sometimes, the bravest thing a person can do is to share their truth quietly, and the bravest thing we can do is to listen. I hope Johnny's story reminds you of that too. If this story moved you, please take a moment to like, comment, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Your support helps us bring more stories that reveal the heart behind the headlines. Don't forget to subscribe, so you never miss a story that touches the soul and reminds us all of the power of compassion, understanding, and grace. Thank you for being part of this journey with us. Together, we can change the way we see the world, one story at a time.